Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Let me start with a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, and I do not play one on the radio.
Yay.
But I have read just about every marijuana bill, medical or legalization, since Prop 19 in California in 2010. So I almost feel like I'm a paralegal at this point. But also, I want to let you know that for the past 7 days, for the first time in 25 years, I've no longer been a criminal. I am a cannabis consumer, and I'm a proud cannabis consumer, and I believe I deserve the same equal rights as beer drinkers and cigar smokers. And that's what we stand for at Portland NORML. We are the consumers lobby, so a lot of what I'm talking about today will have that particular point of view, so to speak. So I'm here to talk about Measure 91 and the amendments that Representative Leininger recently kind of basically spoke about. This PowerPoint is very different from the one that you got in your materials, because when I wrote the PowerPoint originally, none of these bills had passed. So I had to, in fact, I was up last night till 1 in the morning making sure I had all the details entered. If you'd like a copy of this PowerPoint, because people tell me listening to my presentations is like drinking water from a fire hose. There's a lot of information coming at you. If you'd like a copy of this, you can always get a copy from me via email. I'm Radical Russ on everything. Radical Russ at Gmail, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, MySpace, I imagine. I don't know if that's around anymore, but you can get a hold of me at radicalruss@gmail.com. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is the details of Measure 91 that make Oregon different than the other 3 states that have legal cannabis marketplaces. Washington, D.C. doesn't have a cannabis marketplace. It's grow and give. So we're not going to count Washington, D.C., just Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Alaska. We're going to take a look at how the state and local law conflicts kind of shaped this legislative session, some of the negotiating they had to do in some of these bills. We're going to take a look at the bills that amended Measure 91. What is the law now? And if you've got those cards passed out, I had some cards on the desk. You'll notice I had to cross out part of it because they changed the law on me after I printed 5,000 cards. So I'll be doing a lot of Sharpie. What will happen to medical marijuana now that we've passed Measure 91 and all its amendments? How will commercial cannabis and industrial hemp coexist? This has been a big controversy down in Southern Oregon, where they're afraid the hemp plants will cross-pollinate the cannabis plants and vice versa. And finally, what can registrants and licensees and their council expect from Measure 91? All right, so first of all, this is a nice chart that kind of details the differences in our states. We got Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Alaska. And I kind of put these next to each other because Oregon and Washington are very similar, at least at their possession level. We both allow an ounce of marijuana. In fact, all states allow people 21 and older to possess an ounce of marijuana. But in private, we have quite a different setup. Here in Oregon, we're going to be able to possess 8 ounces, a half pound. But in Washington, still just an ounce. In Colorado, they've got an interesting law that says you may possess the results of your harvests, which technically, theoretically, is an infinite limit. Son, what are you doing with 200 pounds of cannabis here? Why, officer, those are the results of my harvests, plural, that I've been harvesting since 2012, right? So, kind of a tough thing for a cop to have to enforce there, you know, and pretty much limitless. And then in Alaska, they got a special situation. They had a Supreme Court case in 1975 called Raven v. Alaska. Alaska's got amazing constitutional protections for privacy, the best in the nation. And Raven v. Alaska decided that the cops' interest in protecting the public safety did not outweigh a person's privacy at their home, so long as they were growing less than 25 plants and possessing less than a quarter pound. So their legalization didn't legalize up to 4 ounces, but their state privacy allows that, and has since 1975. Edibles. We did it right. Washington and Oregon, you could have up to a pound of edibles, brownies, cookies, gummy bears, whatever they might be. The other states said you can have up to an ounce of marijuana in the edible. Well, how do you detect that? You got a plate of brownies sitting in front of you. Is there an ounce in that? Is there 2 ounces in it? You don't know. Makes it tougher for cops to have to enforce. Tinctures, same idea. We can have up to 72 ounces, and I like to convert it. So that's 4.5 pints if you're used to drinking beers, right? So 4.5 pints of infused liquids, which I just call tinctures at this point. But again, Colorado and Alaska did it kind of weird, up to an ounce in the tincture. How would you know? Extracts. Now, this is where things got interesting for me, but let me start by saying with extracts, we're talking about those concentrated forms of cannabis that can include things like oils and hash and such. And the other states have pretty much left it to just an ounce. Washington State, just a quarter ounce. But we had a weird thing in Measure 91, where it defined extracts as things that are extracted with solvents like butane, hexane, propane, carbon dioxide, isopropyl alcohol, ethanol. And then what about stuff that's not extracted with that? There was no definition. We had no idea. What is that, an edible? Is that just marijuana? What's the deal, right? So it said in Measure 91 we could have an ounce of store-bought concentrate. That is concentrate manufactured by a licensed processor under Measure 91. That means right now, in fact, as of July 1st, concentrates are illegal. BHO, butane hash oil, since nobody's licensed to make that yet, and if you're not a medical marijuana patient, all this is if you're not a medical marijuana patient. Possession of that stuff is a misdemeanor. Over a quarter ounce of it is a felony. So a lot of my people in the normal community did not know that, and I made sure to let them know. And then as far as cultivation, we get 4 plants per household, which is kind of problematic, and it's something I hope the legislature takes up. If they had said 4 mature plants per household, we could work with that. But 4 plants means I got 1 mother plant, and then I'm going to clone it and grow that, and it makes it really hard to keep your cycle going if you've only got just 4 plants to work with. So we hope there's some clarification of that in the future. Colorado, 3 immature, 3 mature, and again, Raven v. Alaska allows 25 per household. But then we got some changes. House Bill 3400A made this change, and it's one of my favorite things in 3400. It specifically defined what an extract is something that's using a hydrocarbon-based solvent, what I call the anes, butane, propane, hexane, any of the anes, that's extract. Or carbon dioxide-based extracts if heat and pressure are used. So what that meant is BHO is still illegal until we get some stores that sell it. But everything else that's been made with mechanical or non-hydrocarbon solvents is now defined specifically as a new category called concentrates. Ice water hash, bubble hash, finger hash, using vegetable oils, vegetable glycerin, any way that you concentrate marijuana using those non-solvent-based methods is now a concentrate that you're allowed to have up to a pound of. That's right, I can have a pound of hash in my home and not break a law. I love Oregon. Now, how about the commercial differences with Measure 91? Well, again, the 4 states, as it was written, we were going to let anybody get into the marijuana business here. And we were going to have a $250 application fee with a $1,000 license limit for producers, processors, and retailers. And we added a license nobody else has, wholesalers. No other state's got a wholesaler situation going on. And in Washington State, they limited the number of retailers to 334 storefronts. We don't have such a limitation, although OLCC does have the ability to regulate based on the market needs, but it's not hard-coded into any of our laws yet. And then we had that taxation that we've mentioned where it was going to be a harvest tax, 35 bucks an ounce, $10 an ounce for leaves, $5 an ounce for seedlings. That became problematic because one of the things is 35 bucks an ounce is $560 a pound. A pound of marijuana in Oregon goes for $1,200, $1,500. So now you're talking about a tax that's really like 33% of the price of marijuana. And if the pound goes down to $500 a pound, now your tax is more than the cost of the marijuana itself. So there was some problems with the harvest tax. The other problem, if you're looking forward to possibly integrating medical and commercial markets, and you don't want to tax the medical patients, how do you subtract that tax when it's been installed way back at the production level? You'd have to start giving rebates to patients, and then that becomes a big problem. So it was decided if this is a sales tax, you can just not charge it to the patients. And if it's a sales tax, it will be more reflective of what the price of marijuana is. It will go up and down as the price of marijuana goes up and down. But again, the legislature changed a lot of this. And now, with 3400A, we have a residency requirement. You must be a resident for 2 years in the state of Oregon up until the year 2020. As of January 1st, 2020, the residency requirement goes away. So we got a 4-year start, kind of, on getting Oregonians installed in these businesses. The fees are all going to be cost-based fees where the OLCC can determine what the fee is, but they can't over-fee us. It has to be, somewhat reasonable to the costs of regulating. And the producers, the plants, they're going to set up a tiered system. Kind of like they got in Colorado and Washington, tier 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. We might not have 3 tiers, it might be 5, who knows, but it'll be based on the size of the grow, how many plants or how much square footage. That's still up to OLCC to decide, but we will have greater fees for larger grows. And this is meant to protect the smaller growers, let them be able to compete too. And our tax got changed. As of October 1st, when we're going to start those early sales, we'll have a 25% point of sale tax. As of January, the tax kicks in to the 17% retail tax and up to 3% local tax if the locals voted in, if the locality allows all types of licenses. Also, while 3,400 didn't do this, Washington recently changed their taxes too. They got rid of that 25% at 3 different levels and made it just a 37% tax. And I really think that we are going to start to see in the Pacific Northwest, the world's only shared border marijuana region in the world, a kind of a competition between the states. Right now, the #1 and #3 best-selling pot shops in all of Washington state are in Vancouver. The 4 pot shops in Vancouver outsell the 15 pot shops in Seattle. That's all us Oregonians crossing the river and breaking federal law. As of October 1st, when our pot shops here in Portland, of which there's about 97 of them, if they start selling tax-free marijuana, that'll be the giant sucking sound of Washington money coming into Oregon to buy that tax-free marijuana. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other things that Measure 91 did in the way of depenalization. And I think this is very important because not only did we legalize great amounts for people to possess and produce, we also depenalized if they went over those limits. I already told you what's legal with public, private, edibles, all that. Twice those amounts of marijuana, edibles, concentrates, tinctures, and extracts, twice those amounts are just a Class B violation. You're just going to get a ticket for having up to a pound of marijuana in your house. And up to 4 times those amounts is a Class B misdemeanor. I can have up to 2 pounds of marijuana in my house and only get a misdemeanor. And the way Measure 91 was originally written, 4 times or more would be a Class C felony. And that reduced some of them from Class A's and Class B's, where it's a 20 or a 10-year mandatory and it's harder to expunge, to a Class C, where it's a 5-year and it's easier to expunge. So we were happy about that when we saw that. Then, of course, extracts, again, since it's homemade, we don't have any store-bought extracts right now. Those are misdemeanors or felonies. And then the plants, 4 in a household is legal, up to 8 is a misdemeanor, over 8's a felony. And man, I was excited when I saw this, because I'm like, that's a great level of depenalization. The legislature gave us more. In 3,400, they reduced all the possessions to Class A misdemeanors at 4 times or more. This means there is no amount of marijuana, concentrates, edibles, or liquids I can possess that will get me a felony. I can possess 1,000 pounds of marijuana in my house and it's going to be a Class A misdemeanor. Now that's absent trafficking or, giving it to kids or something, but as long as I'm obeying the law and I'm an adult, I can have 1,000 pounds of hash in my house and get just a misdemeanor. They did keep the Class C felonies for growing more than 8 plants or having a quarter ounce or more of the extracts, though. So those did remain. Now, some other depenalizations. Unlawful delivery. Less than 5 grams is a Class B violation. Up to an ounce is a Class A violation. So those are sales. Those are illegal sales, unlawful delivery. Over an ounce, a Class A misdemeanor, and if you're selling to a minor, if you're selling to someone under 18 and you're over 21, that remains a Class C felony. There was an attempt to try to get that down to a misdemeanor because the penalty for selling a lot of alcohol to a minor is a misdemeanor, and hey, we're supposed to treat it like alcohol, right? But marijuana and kids, not an easy sell to try to get that penalty reduced, so that still remains Class C. Unlawful manufacture or delivery within 1,000 feet of a school remains a Class A felony. This is the big one. This is the one you can really get busted for. So if you got those 4 plants that you're growing, we do have the legal right as adults to grow our 4 plants within 1,000 feet of a school. They explicitly protected that. But you go over that 4 plants, you're looking at Class A felony territory. Kind of weird to go from legal with 4 plants to Class A felony with 5 if you're within 1,000 feet of a school. Importing or exporting, you take this stuff across the river, across Washington, Colorado, California, Idaho, whatever, as long as it was for no consideration, you just brought weed with you, Class A misdemeanor. But if you're trying to sell it, Class C felony. Access attempt by minors. If a minor tries to get into a marijuana shop, it's a ticket. If they're in possession of less than an ounce, it's a ticket. Up to 8 ounces, a Class B misdemeanor. Over 8 ounces, a Class A misdemeanor. So even a child, a teenager, cannot get a felony for merely possessing marijuana. Edibles, same deal, up to a pound, over a pound. Tinctures, up to 4.5 pints, over 4.5 pints. But notice there's no ticket for edibles or tinctures. No ticket for edibles or tinctures because we want to keep those gummy bears away from the kids and those sodas away from the kids. All right, let's talk about the state law versus the local option. This was a big fight in the legislature because a lot of the eastern Oregon counties, more rural areas, hate marijuana and hate people like me who use it and did not want to see pop shops opening up in their neighborhood. So we wrote a few things. We said only the state should be able to tax marijuana, just like liquor. But the cities and counties wanted local taxes. We said only the people can ban licenses, just like liquor. They want to be able to ban it with their city council or county commission. We said the medical marijuana program shall not be affected. They said, no, we're going to affect the medical marijuana program. We want to change a whole bunch about the medical program. So here's what happened. First, in 3400, we have what I call the Eastern Compromise, or the formation of the state of West Idaho. And that is, these counties in red all voted more than 55% against Measure 91, so they don't have to follow the law. They get to do local option banning to their heart's content. They can have their city council or county commission just ban any sort of license they want. Now, they can't ban your personal rights. You still get to grow, you still get to possess. The yellow counties voted against 91, but not at 55% or greater, so they still have to follow the law. And the green counties voted for 91, so they have to follow the law, which means if they want to ban, they have to put it on the ballot, the people have to vote on it. And they've got 180 days to implement those bans, so I guess till the end of this year that they can implement those bans. And it includes all types of shops, includes medical as well. It's kind of a problem there. There's also some new definitions in 3400A. An extract, what we defined it as in 91 was vegetable glycerin, butane, hexane, isopropyl alcohol, butane, hexane, isopropyl alcohol, ethanol, and carbon dioxide. The legislature changed it, so we now have a definition of concentrate. That is, if you use mechanical or non-solvent means, like any of those oils, fats, or water, or alcohol, or carbon dioxide, so long as you're not using high heat or pressure. An extract, on the other hand, is using a solvent like butane, hexane, or propane, or carbon dioxide plus high heat or pressure. And another great redefinition, immature plant is a non-flowering plant. Seems obvious if you know anything about plants, but in the medical marijuana law, we've had this definition since 2005 that an immature plant is any plant that's over 12 inches tall or 12 inches wide. Whether it's got flowers, buds, doesn't matter. If it's over 12 inches by 12 inches, it's mature. Which is kind of like saying a teenage girl is sexually mature if she's over 5'2". It makes no logical sense, right? So they got that changed. That's very good. Advertising restrictions. As Measure 91 was written, it said the OLCC could regulate or prohibit any advertising on newspaper, letters, billboards, radio, or otherwise. As a guy who survives on radio advertising, this really bothered me. So I'm happy that they changed the law. OLCC may adopt rules regulating and prohibiting advertising that is in a manner that appeals to minors, promotes excessive use, promotes illegal activity, or presents risks to public health and safety. In other words, they got to have a reason to ban based on the content of the ad. They just can't do blanket bans on ads. That's good news for people, the businesses here that are going to want to advertise, and great news for me as one who takes advertisement. Prior convictions versus licensing. In Measure 91, we had written that if you were convicted of cultivation or delivery to a minor within 5 years, you couldn't apply for a license, it disqualified you. The legislature changed that to 2 years. 2 years. That's good news. All right, the types of licenses. The marijuana producer license, you must be 21 years of age and a resident for at least 2 years. And that requirement expires in 2020. And I have to ask a lawyer type because there's a comma involved, but does that also expire the 21 age limit? Because it's in the same line that says it expires in 2020. So I'm going to have to talk to some lawyers about that, whether or not that part expired. I know that's not what they intended.
That'll be 10 years of litigation.
That's right. We'll take it to court. That's right. OLCC cannot limit the number, canopy, or weight of immature marijuana plants for a processor. If I've got a processor license, I can grow 80 football fields with 1 million immature plants in them. They can't limit me. Immature plants are not counted or limited in any way. Now, what's really good about this is because an immature plant is now not defined as 12 inches, but any height, this is going to open up an opportunity that I call the Papa Murphy's take and bake of marijuana. A farmer will be able to grow a marijuana plant to a vegetative state, keep it in that large size vegetative state. I can come in and buy it, he'll give me instructions, put this into the flowering cycle. 6 weeks later, I got buds coming off of my marijuana plant. It's going to be a very, very lucrative industry. Their mature plant canopies will be limited in a tiered system with consideration of demand. So they may say, tier 3 is 10,000 square feet, or tier 5 is 20,000, whatever. They haven't made those rules yet, but they are going to have a series of limits on what size the grows can be and what the fees will be for those grows. That'll be a sliding fee based on the square feet of the mature plants. But the sliding fee does not apply to producers of immature plants only. So you could be a producer only producing vegetative plants, have no limit on how many you can produce, have $250 application fee and $1,000 annual fee, because they can't slide that fee on you based on immature plants. Yeah. Sure. You got it. The other licensees, processors, wholesalers, and retailers, again, the 21 years old and 2-year resident, you cannot be in exclusive residential zones if you're a retailer, a wholesaler, or an extract processor. By them putting the word extract there means they didn't include people making brownies, cookies, gummy bears, liquids. Those kind of processors apparently can still be in residential zones. Retailers can't be within 1,000 feet of the schools. But if a school moves in and a retailer's already there, the retailer can stay. Because that was a problem for a lot of people. I don't want to invest a bunch of money in my pot shop and then a school moves in and I got to pull up roots. Not anymore. You're protected, you get to stay. And they're going to set up industry best practices, and that'll be determined by OLCC and some working groups to decide what are the best practices, and you have to follow those. And there'll be fines and punishment available for that. A new bit written into law, bud tender permits. Bud tender, a retail server of marijuana, right? Someone who's handling marijuana for a licensee. OLCC might require him to have these sort of training. Can they check ID, detect intoxication, handle marijuana items, the marijuana laws, public health and safety. I, as a consumer, want someone who knows a little bit about the product to be selling to me and to have some idea that they need to wash their hands and so forth, so that's good news. Criminal background check for felonies, but again, if it's a cultivation or delivery charge that's over 2 years old, you can still get your bud tender license. They mostly want to stop people that within the past couple of years were growing and selling, or if they got a felony for other drugs or crimes. And there's explicit protection for whistleblowers, and if the employees want to unionize, explicitly written into 3400. All right, so miscellaneous things in the 3400. OLCC could require bonds and liability insurance. They're going to put together a seed-to-sale tracking system. I already told you that if minors try to access marijuana items, it's a ticket, except OLCC can send in minor decoys for sting operations, and they're not breaking the law. And 911, have you ever heard of the Good Samaritan 911 law? It means that if a person calls the cops or the EMTs or the ambulance because there's somebody overdosing on drugs, they don't get punished because there's drugs there. So this applies to minors. If, like, say kids are at a party and they had some brownies and one kid's getting sick and passing out, they can call the cops or call the ER, the ambulance, and not face that ticket for calling for help. Right? We don't want to discourage them from getting medical help, so that's what that's in there for. Governments can adopt time, place, and manner regulations, but the time, place, and manner regulations can't restrict the licensees from being more than 1,000 feet from each other. Can be less, but not more. This is to prevent like a hateful government from saying, okay, you can have pot shops, but they have to be 10 miles apart from each other. Right, yeah, 10 miles apart, you're going to get one pot shop. So they can't do that. 1,000 foot's the limit that they can mandate that they're apart from each other. And you can personally produce, possess, and process marijuana within 1,000 feet of the school. Let me get through, I got 5 minutes, let me get through this. A couple other definitions. Marijuana crops are now defined as crops for farm use and farm practice. That kicks in a lot of agricultural laws and regulations, land use stuff that the representative was talking about. Cannabis seeds are now defined as nursery stock. That's eventually going to help us out with that immaculate conception situation and defining how we can sell and buy seeds. The marijuana products and concentrates must be produced, processed, and stored out of public view. I can possess my ounce of marijuana, but if I'm sitting on the street corner holding up my clear baggie of marijuana, I'm going to get a ticket. There's going to be a problem there. And prior convictions are treated under the new law or a Class C misdemeanor if what you were busted for is now legal for the purposes of setting aside a conviction. If you're trying to get expungement or set aside a conviction, whatever you got busted for, we're going to treat it as if it were the law now and how you would go through that process to get expunged or whatever. So for some people who had a Class A felony and now that thing is just a Class C, that helps them out when they're trying to get expunged. Something that used to be a Class A misdemeanor is now a ticket. That's going to help the person trying to get expunged. All right, SB 460 allows early sales. We are going to go from legalization on July 1st to sales on October 1st. Our 3-month gap is the shortest of any state that's tried this. Took Colorado a year before they had pot shops. Took Washington State a year and a half. These SB 460 would allow the existing dispensaries on October 1st and up through December 31st, 2016 to sell to adults, but limited to a 1/4 ounce of flowers, no extracts, edibles, or tinctures, can purchase 4 seedlings or seeds. So I won't be able to go into a pot shop and buy an ounce. I won't be able to buy any tinctures or extracts or edibles. And local governments can ban that. They can say that the dispensaries can't sell there. And starting October 1st, those sales are tax-free. Tax-free marijuana for the last quarter of 2015. Thank you, Salem. But 2041A kicks in on January 1st. This would set that 25% sales tax that's only paid by recreational. Medical people won't be paying the tax. It begins at the dispensaries on January 4th because the 1st is a holiday, 2nd, 3rd, or a weekend or something like that. It's like Monday, January 4th. And then the tax reverts to that 17% plus the possible 3% when the retailers open, when the licensed pot shops open. Goes down from 25 down to that. And the localities in Eastern Oregon that ban pot shops are going to get a share of the tax us Western Oregonians are paying. They're going to get their cut up until July 1st, 2017. Medical marijuana, great changes here. Veterans with PTSD can now get their LMNP card for just $20. A new condition is added, degenerative or pervasive neurological conditions, ALS, Parkinson's, Huntington's, those kind of things. Organ transplant protection, can't be kicked off an organ transplant list. My friend Jim Clark, a longtime medical marijuana advocate, went 9 years without medical marijuana while he was waiting a liver transplant, died last year waiting for that. Had this law been in effect, he'd still be alive. Hospices and palliative care can be additional caregivers, and now patients can fully reimburse growers. No more of this wink, wink, nudge, nudge, supplies and utilities, right? Now you can reimburse them for the labor as well. Immature plant and concentrate match the new rec definitions. There's a new processors designation. There's all of this inspection and tracking that now happens under the medical marijuana law. There have to be monthly reporting, 2-year record retention, counting plant numbers, amounts of leaves and flowers drying, amounts of usable marijuana. And again, the 2-year residency requirement. You can be disqualified if you've had an A or B felony for a Schedule 1 or 2 drug, or if you've been twice convicted of an A or B felony for a Schedule 1 or 2 drug, your lifetime ban on getting licenses. Grow limits, there's been a grow limit on number of mature plants at a grow site, up to 12 plants in a residential area, up to 48 in a non-residential area with up to 6 plants per patient. This used to be almost unlimited. Card stacking, you'd have 4 growers, or 1 grower who has 4 patients, and 1 address that has multiple growers, and you end up with a farm with 104 patients and 624 plants, all being for Californians. There's a cap on possession now. Indoor grows can possess 6 pounds per plant, outdoor grows 12 pounds per plant. So if we talk about one of those outdoor non-residential plant grows, that's 576 pounds of marijuana that could be at one of those grow sites, quarter ton. I think I've got 2 slides. The hemp has survived. They were trying to ban hemp and pull all the existing crops and put a moratorium on it for 2 years because the Southern Oregon growers didn't want the cross-pollination. That was killed by the Senate. And some things you can expect: it'll probably be cheaper and easier to license than other states. Some bureaucratic resistance in the rural areas. No tied house or vertical integration. You can have as many of any type of license you want that you can qualify for. Tourist boost for the Oregon coast and bend. Massive crash in wholesale prices. Oregon is going to drop the floor on marijuana prices nationwide. We're already the cheapest in the nation at $204 an average for a high quality ounce. It's going to go below that. I wouldn't be surprised to see $50 an ounce in a couple of years. Delivery opportunities. Since Eastern Oregon isn't going to allow pot shops, somebody's going to take that marijuana to them. And I imagine in the future they'll integrate commercial and medical distribution channels. So I'm Radical Russ. Like I said, I'm Radical Russ everywhere. If you look on internet, Gmail, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud. I'm also at portlandnormal.org. You'll be able to get this PowerPoint from me if you just email me or hit me up on Facebook. Be glad to help you out. And of course, I'm the head of 420 Radio and the Russ Belville Show. I'll be going live today at 3 o'clock with recording of this very event. So check me out online. Thanks for listening, and thank you for having me here.